I'm Sierra Bauer. As you know, I was up here last week from POPP, Protection of Pacechester People. Back up here today basically to rehash what happened last night at our town hall meeting that we had. I know a lot of people couldn't come, but a lot of people did, and we had a great turnout. So I just want to rehash some of the points that were brought up there, as well as talk more on things that I didn't get to talk about last week. I didn't really have a chance to talk too much last week. It was a little all over the place, so we're back to try and bring up some things that I couldn't. So last night at the town hall meeting, Paige, our CEO, did talk about several things. One of the things, the first thing she talked about was the water crisis that we are still facing. She talked about what's going on with that, symptoms to look out for, what to avoid, what to do in the meantime. She made some really great points, and just to keep this short, you can go right to our Twitter where we have the entire video of the town hall meeting, and you can watch everything that she said about that. She also talked about tenant rights. I know a lot of people were confused on that. Basically, tenant rights have to do with rights that belong to tenants, who are people who rent or occupy land that are owned by a landlord. So they have rights just like any other people. They have right to privacy. Landlords can't just bust in there to their apartments unless they notify them. And a big right they have is rent control. This is a big deal for a lot of people because Pacechester is not protected by rent control. We don't have a rent control policy. So this means, let's say, the Olympics does come in, it does happen, and people are moved out of their homes, and then there's people in surrounding areas that get to stay in their homes. They probably will and could still face rise in their rent, a rise that they might not be able to afford. So that's one big thing that she touched on that we hope to continue discussing. And then right on to the Olympics, discussing more facts about the Olympics. I know last week, I believe it was the Setters Times that asked Pacechester 2020 some pros and cons. I think it was a general question, pros and cons of the Olympics. And of course, they just touched on one of the cons, one of the pros, a few pros. And it was talking about the Olympics and how in Lake Placid it was a great turnout. And one thing I wanted to point out was that Lake Placid was in 1980. We are in 2018. A lot changes in 38 years. And she made the point that increased valuable tourism and it can boost local economies. But the flip side to that is that the financial drain is all on the host city. So no Olympic Games since 1960 has come under budget. And then each host city is responsible for these cost overruns in addition to the original budget. So from 1968 to 2010, the average cost overrun was 252% for Summer Olympics and then 135% for Winter Olympics. One big thing was that Rio 2016, most recent Olympics, they estimated that it would cost $3 billion. Well, it actually ended up costing somewhere around $13 billion. So how did the city compensate for that? They had to cut healthcare and police spending. With our water crisis and then the, as I quote, hooliganism that happened last night at a Choate FC game, I don't think we have room to cut on healthcare and police spending. So now I do want to open the floor for any questions that anyone has.
Alexandra Belushi for Pacechester Daily. Touching on the hooligan situation that happened last night, are you aware of the gang violence and the horrific violence that happens at soccer games all over the country and the world?
Yes. One of the big things was that Rio faced a lot of that. Rio had crime already, as it was, and then when the Olympics came in, it actually did increase that because these people in the outer areas, they do suffer. And we're at Pacechester, we're not perfect, we have crime as well, but what we don't want to see is it we don't want a rise in crime. And we don't want to cut in police spending that are helping to protect us and stop the crime from happening.
And do you feel you'd be opening up the community to violence and death if you allow this Olympics to come here and the stadium to be used for soccer afterwards?
Absolutely. It could happen. It has happened before. Yes.
What is the crime rate in Pacechester now?
I don't have an actual percentage, but I do know it's low. We haven't had many as of now. We see this was like our first report of a big one. But I think it's just convenient that it was.
You said that in Rio that the crime rate did increase.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how much it increased?
I don't have an exact number. I can give you an exact number on social media without a doubt. But it is a fact that it has increased, and that actually there was, let me look up. So they built these buildings for the athletes. It was called the Athlete Village, where the athletes stayed. And then these were promised to be luxury apartments for everyone who was relocated and for people in the area. These luxury apartments are now shuttered buildings. And yeah, it houses a lot of people who just go in and out, people who maybe are homeless or what have you, and it has increased crime.
So are you saying Pacechester 2020 is making false promises to give people who are displaced from their home better housing after the Olympics?
I don't want to make a personal comment on that, but what I will say is that you have these organizations coming in that are promising you all these things, and you want to be able to trust those organizations. And from what we've seen so far, can we trust these organizations when there's fake media, whatever that was last week, where they're sitting there for a minute? There is now, it was just created conveniently today, Pacechester Chronicle, with its first follower and first following being Pacechester 2020. I don't know if that's just to cover their own tracks, but these people are promising you and making all these promises, and I don't feel like I can trust them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think a lot of people feel like they can.
Senator Slimes, are you guys also aware of the amount of racism and prejudice that happens during these soccer games and in soccer teams as well?
You mean like within soccer teams?
Mhm.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things actually when it comes to Olympics coming in, there's gentrification, there's relocation, there's a lot of people have reported like discriminatory cases, and like you just said, it already happens when it comes to sports.
Mm-hmm.
Don't want it to happen anymore.
And how can you be
promise
sure last night was an isolated incident?
How can we
Prevent this from happening again, or make sure that this was an isolated? How can you promise the people of Pacechester that what happened last night at the field was an isolated incident?
hoping to get to the bottom of it, because I guess on the police report said the cause was still not known. And then again, like I said, we don't want to have to cut anything on police spending. I think the police did a great job by handling it. So definitely get to the cause, the bottom of it. What was it? Why did they start acting the way they did? And yeah, hoping the police stay on top of it.
What is your response to Choate FC's statement that it was false and that there was no game and no team?
What do you mean? Last night?
Yeah, Choate FC released a statement a couple of minutes ago, actually, that the event that happened last night, the incident, was false. So what is your response on that?
I mean, there's a police report released. So I would like to have them dig further then, back up their statement, see who would make a false police report.
What's your relationship at this moment with Choate FC?
We don't have much of one.
Is there anything that Choate FC could do to address your concerns and that would allow a stadium to be built and their team to go on, or are you, are you just against the idea of Choate FC being here?
We're not against it, and that was one thing that our CEO stated last night, was that, the Olympics can be a great thing, that has to do with Pacechester 2020, but we just don't think Pacechester is the place for it. And when it comes to the soccer team, we haven't shut our doors on anybody. We're more than willing to discuss everything with the other sides, I guess you could say. But I remember in I think it was their first press conference, they did mention that when it comes to the people of Pacechester and relocating people and their living situation, that it's not their problem. And we just felt like, well, it's our problem, and we take care of it and we handle it. So that kind of rubbed us the wrong way, but our door's open. Our door's always open.
What are specific things that you're looking for from Choate FC in order for them to demonstrate that they can be a good neighbor?
Probably a little more support, like, in the community, if that makes sense. Right now I'm just seeing a lot of scoping out places, and I don't really see them making an effort to include the community more in these decisions and really getting feedback from people and that kind of thing.
You mentioned living conditions. I actually want to talk about the water really quickly, the ongoing water situation.
Sure.
What kind of, just in general, what kind of precautions should Pacechester residents be taking to stay safe from the water? And if they have been affected with this virus, what measures should they take to?
Paige actually made some phenomenal points on that, so again, I'm going to redirect you to our Twitter for that. But some of the things right now, just try to stick to bottled water if you can. If you can't, boil your water, but try to stay away from it until we can really get it handled. And then, yeah, just go right back to our Twitter, because she made some phenomenal points on it.
And do we have an estimation of time of when hopefully the water would be safe?
We don't right now, unfortunately, so we're just trying to handle it and put our focus on that.
So if things like this are occurring now when it's just Pacechester residents, how do you feel it will impact if we had hundreds of people coming here for the Olympics and problems like this occurred?
that's one of our biggest points, is that if this is happening now and we're having to handle it now, is it just gonna increase and is it gonna be more? And if so, how are we gonna handle it then with all of the spending that's gonna come with the Olympics? So thank you all for coming. I'm gonna end it here, but you have our social media, direct message us, we answer immediately. Thank you again.
Can I ask a general question? I see that you're all a nonprofit. Are you a volunteer? Are you an only volunteer organization, or do you have paid employees?
For
For
like
POPP?
us or
Yes. Are you paid? Are you full time?
nonprofit?
Nonprofit, yeah. But what I mean is, do you have like a budget, or are you strictly, does everyone donate their time and
Do you get paid for your service as a POPP?
No.
it's strictly volunteer? Like you all have other jobs?
No, we get paid. We have employees. Those are mainly volunteers. We do get paid.
You do get paid. Okay, so I'm just wondering where your funding comes from.
We have donors.
You have donors?
Yes.
Do you have a list of those donors?
Yeah. We can release that on social media at some point if you'd like.
Or send it
Okay.
directly to you.
Okay. I mean, as a nonprofit, you should.
Okay, thank you.